Frolo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frolo app is the one for you. The Frolo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. The Frolo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you are looking for. To download Frolo, search for Frolo, Frolo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frolo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frolo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frolo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frolo podcast. Today, I am joined by Dr. Alison McClymont, who's a psychologist with 10 years experience working in child and adolescent mental health, specializing in trauma and emotional resilience. Dr. Alison, it's so lovely to have you here on the Frolo podcast.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh, fab. Well, I know that you've got a new book coming out, so really keen to hear all about that. And as I'm sure you can imagine, any parent listening and any of the single parents in the Frolo community and that listen to the podcast, your work is going to be relevant to every single one of us because, you know, as parents, we want to, teach our kids the tools and tricks for, emotional resilience and, you know, all of the important work that you're doing. So really keen to get some tips from you today on that. But it would be so great to start with a bit about you and your background and what led you into this work.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Dr. Alison McClymont and I am a clinical psychologist. I'm also trained as an arts therapist, so I'm kind of dual registered. And I'm originally from the UK. I was trained in the UK, used to work in the NHS, but I've also worked in special education settings. I've worked in charities with children. I'm now in private practice, but my specialism has actually always been trauma, and that's been nearly 15 years now that I've been working in kind of very sort of, if you like, frontline trauma, so working with refugee families and refugee children, down to more what I talk about in the book, or what I describe in the book as small t trauma, so things like negative experiences at school, family bereavement, family separation, that type of thing. So I've worked the full gamut. But currently I'm in private practice, and I work with children and adolescents.
And what was it about, you know, what kind of led you to this work? Is this something you always were interested in doing when you were younger, or were there any experiences in your life where you felt compelled to focus on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about trauma, and I think this is really kind of, everyone has varying times of trauma or things that have given them traumatic experiences in life. So definitely I'm very interested in that, because as I kind of talk about in the book, we all have, from what those I call big T traumas. So lots of, well, not all of us, but some of us have experienced those. But we've all had these difficult experiences, particularly in our early lives, that shape who we are as adults. And I'm really interested in that. What brought me to working in psychology well, originally creative arts therapy, I think, is just a love of working with people and a real passion for mental health. But I think trauma specifically was, I think I can. I think I know in my own life, and I can see within my own work as a mum as well, and also as a therapist, that what our early, how much our early experiences shape who we become as adults. And I'm really kind of passionate about helping people manage that path.
And you mentioned there that you're a mom. So what age are your kids?
So I have two wonderful little girls. I have a 5-year-old and I have an 8-year-old.
Okay. And I'm really interested to hear from you, because I definitely notice in my own parenting signs of how I was parented. And sometimes, yeah, and it can create this either feeling of empathy for my parents on that I kind of didn't quite understand um, you know, certain aspects of why they reacted the way they did about certain things. I have more of an understanding and empathy for them, but also, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to, replay these patterns into my parenting style. So I'm just wondering, as a mom, and then also within the work that you're doing, that must be really interesting. So how do you work with those things?
So it's really hard, isn't it? Because even, I mean, my goodness, I've been a psychologist for, as I say, nearly 15 years. And I still think you can read lots and lots of things and even know lots of things academically, but nothing prepares you for the kind of what can be at times real challenging landscape of parenthood, particularly those early years. So yeah, you know what, I know the stuff academically, but it doesn't always work in practice. But I think more than anything, I'm really interested in that we parent the way we were parented, and actually we can take some wonderful stuff from that, and we can also see if we can heal the less wonderful things about that. Because I think we're also, I often like to do work with adults around what I call a genogram. So it's actually, I guess, in many ways, it's a family tree, but we look at what messages that have come down your kind of lineage about what a good mother is, what a good father is, or even what a good child is. And I think that's really important for us to look at. And we can see how these messages, both positive and sometimes negative, can impact the way we choose to parent. So, for example, how was conflict settled in your house? How was discipline done in your house? How were academic challenges approached in your house? All of that kind of thing, I think, is it really informs us as parents. And if it's something we want to change, we need to be informed about it in the first place to know how to change it, right? So I definitely
Yeah.
am conscious of the lineage of people, even generations and generations back that parented me.
So your book, I would love to hear about your book. So what's your book called? When is it out? What's it about? What led you to writing this book?
Great. So my book is entitled How to Help Your Child with Anything, which is a very big catch-all title, but essentially I wanted to, obviously I'm a trauma specialist, and there's lots of amazing books written about trauma as we often think about trauma. So um, things that are a threat to life, things that are violent experiences, even kind of child abuse, that sort of thing. And I wanted to write a book that was more, and thankfully those things are not common, right? Or not as common as what I'm calling small t traumas. So I wanted to write a book that was much more of an everyday parenting help guide for what do you do if your child is experiencing bullying? How do you explain death to your child? How do you deal with divorce or blended families with your child? I wanted to write something that was really kind of trauma informed and bringing neuroscience and all that stuff that we know as trauma experts, but into everyday life and how you can use that. So I developed a little technique that I have called in the book extract, express, and reflect, but it's based on essentially it's based on how we debrief trauma with someone who has recovered from a really major traumatic event. And it's a very kind of simple 3-step process, but I'm hoping that it will help parents just have better conversations with their child about things that have upset them or scared them or made them feel embarrassed or ashamed. And I think that's important as well, because when we think about trauma, we think, oh, it must be something that's scared the child or has upset the child, but actually trauma things can be things that have made them feel humiliated or embarrassed as well. So we need to look at that as well. So the book is out on August the 29th. And yeah, as I say, I'm hoping that it's going to be, I guess, just a real assistance guide coming from a really trauma-informed place, and all the science and all the psychology and all that stuff, but an everyday guide to what do you say when your child says, I've had this problem with this other child at school, for example?
Yeah, because it's so hard, isn't it? In the parenting moments, and especially as a single parent, there is not someone else there to bounce things off in those really challenging situations where you question yourself and have a crisis of confidence and say, is this the right way to approach this? Am I doing the right thing? Am I handling this well? Should I be kind of inserting a boundary here, or do they need to feel kind of, do they need me just to throw my arms out? It's really hard sometimes. But yeah, so I'd love to hear more about the extract, express, reflect method that you mentioned that you developed. So can you give us a little overview of what that is?
Yeah, I can. I mean, essentially, as I say, it's based on a technique in trauma work that we call debriefing. But essentially, we're looking at, and it's based on how traumatic memories are stored, which is I go sort of really into in the book, and the kind of neuroscience of it, and the kind of reasons behind the way we do this, and how we're actually using this 3 steps to reprogram the experience into something of positivity. But essentially, in the first instance, we're getting the child to tell us all the facts. So that's the extract place. And I give the sort of neuroscience around why we do that and why that helps encode the memory in the way it does. Then express. So we get the facts. Then we get the emotions. And again, this connects to very specific kind of neuroscience of the way the memory is going to be encoded. And then after that, we get the child to reflect what this has meant. Now, it doesn't have to be a positive reflection. So it doesn't have to be, I'm glad this happened to me. But what we're encouraging the child to think is, what was the positive thing you did within that memories? And the reason we do this is we know that when people reflect on things that are traumatic that have happened to them, one of the key components of a traumatic memory is the feeling of helplessness, or I guess the thoughts of I should have done, or why didn't I do? And then the kind of ensuing shame that happens as a result of that. So what we do in the extract, express, reflect is I'm encouraging parents to help the child find what I call agency. So i.e., what did you do? How were you not helpless? How were you, how did you help yourself? And what's the positivity that you can take around, actually, I made a really good decision there. And in some cases, we can also look at how did other people help? Did anyone else do anything positive? Because the other thing we know from trauma research is that, unfortunately, when traumatic things happen to people, they can then hold the view that the world is a negative place, or that people won't help, or that the world is not full of good people. So in this technique, we're trying to encourage the child to see that there are other people that are positive beings in the world, and also you are in control. And that's really the key part of it. So I think when people first hear the technique, extract, express, reflect, they kind of get the first two, and then they think, so reflect, we want the child to say, I'm glad this happened. No, we don't. But we want the child to think what was positive about what they did within the experience. Because of course, for example, in a case like bullying, we don't want the child to think, I'm glad that happened to me. Of course we don't. But We want them to feel pride in something they did. Was it tell the teacher? Was it say this? Was it, even if it's the tiniest thing, we want to pull that out of the story.
That's really helpful and insightful. And I guess I just am wondering about that first step, extract. When the child doesn't want to speak and they bottle up. So if you know there is something going on and they are, they're presenting as very guarded about it, are there any, is there anything you can share that is helpful for those situations or helping kids communicate?
Yeah. So the book goes in quite depth around the way that you choose the setting for these conversations, and kind of it gives you real kind of opening lines for how you start these conversations. But the point of the extract piece of the facts is we're asking very factual questions here. So who was there? Then what happened? Then what did that person say? We're not asking emotionally charged questions at this point. We're just getting the narrative. We're not doing anything else. And depending on the way you phrase that, people will often be willing to engage in a kind of factual exchange of information for that. So if you're just saying, so where were you at the time? Oh, okay. So, and then you were standing there and they were, where were they? We're not imbuing that with kind of, I guess, any sort of value judgment. We're just getting the information there. But regarding how we talk to children who are guarded, it really kind of goes into the book around the setting, your body language, your body placement, their body placement, is everyone, how you create a safe space. Because if a child feels that they're being asked to have this conversation and the space feels unsafe, they're not going to do that. So we have to pay so much attention to that. And also, again, going back to that idea of giving them agency, we really get them to choose the setting and choose, where they sit, where you sit, all of that sort of stuff.
Okay, that's really helpful. And you mentioned that the book covers some kind of everyday or general situations that come up, and you mentioned separation and divorce, and just taking obviously into account our listenership for the podcast, there's going to be a lot of separated and divorced parents, but then also some widowed parents as well, and and then some completely solo parents by choice. So if there's any kind of insight you can give into those aspects of parenting, or helpful insights in how we can support our kids, that would be super.
Definitely. And actually, in the book, one of the things I feel really passionately about, maternal mental health is something I feel really passionately about. And one of the things it's a slight deviation from extract, express, reflect, but I think is a really important section in the book and is really dear to my heart, is helping parents, and I'm specifically not using the word mother here, but helping the people who care for children. So be you a biological parent, an adopted parent, and maybe you're part of the extended family, maybe you're the grandparent, to understand that your attachment to the child is equally as important. I think we often get lost in parenting media where we say that the mother, and actually that's really overwhelming, because, for example, if anybody's read anything about attachment parenting, it puts pretty much all the emphasis on the child's entire mental health and well-being on the role of the mother. And actually, if you read the data, the child benefits from lots of attachment figures. So it might be that you are a single parent, but you have a great relationship, with your parents, and the child has wonderful grandparents. Fabulous. It might be that you've got a best friend that comes in and is also an attachment figure. Amazing. Anything that we can help parents be supported with the community around them is an absolute benefit to the child. And you mentioned widowed parents there, and in the book, I've specifically, in the bereavement section, I've specifically written about that particular type of loss for not only the parents who is the surviving parent, but for the child, and how that can be marked, because that's so poignant. And in the divorce and separation, I've talked again very specifically about the role of blended families. So, how important that is to understand that maybe you're a separated parent and now maybe you're becoming a step parent, and what that means. But I think more than anything, I really, really, really wanted this book to be empowering and supportive of parents in all the forms that they come in, because I often feel parenting literature can be very, you should do this, and if you haven't done this, then your child will be this, da, 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 da. And actually, that's not real life. Parenting is messy, and as I say, it comes in all forms. It doesn't have to just be all on the role of mother, because I think mothers in particular feel incredible mental anguish and burden about that when they read that. They don't feel empowered by that. They feel judged, and they feel, and I really wanted to write something that was completely anti that, and made people feel, you're not going to get it right every time. Don't worry about it. That's okay.
Yes, well, thank you for that, because it's very refreshing, and I couldn't agree more that there's usually such a focus on the mother, and almost a one size fits all thing, as if we all have, the very same setups, and which is just, as
And
you say,
resources, and yeah,
exactly,
exactly.
yeah, which is definitely not real life. So thank you for, yeah, bringing in the inclusivity and the reality, which is that parenting is messy no matter what.
And I wanted to write the book with the idea that if your intention was to create, it makes me quite emotional thinking about it, because it's something I believe so deeply and so much. If your intention was to create a loving, safe space for your child, you've done a great job. You've done a wonderful job. If your child in their childhood felt safe and they felt loved, your work here is done. Like, there is nothing, you don't need to have known, you know what, if you lost, if you lost it one time in the supermarket and you shouted, or you did this, or you didn't do that, that's fine. But if you set out with the intention to keep your child safe and loved, you've done a wonderful job. Because I think the problem, well, it's wonderful that we all have lots of access to science and psychology now, and it's wonderful that we have that, but it can feel really overwhelming. And that, I mean, I read this statistic the other day that a child's attachment pattern is created from 0 to 2, and I just put my head in my hands thinking about what do parents who maybe they had a really difficult time during that period, what do they read when they think that, what my child's,
Thank you. Yeah, well, I am in that category, because I was going through my, separation from my son's dad. We broke up when my son had just turned 1, and actually throughout my pregnancy and for the first year of his life, I was in a really, really challenging, difficult place. So I look back on that time, and it fills me with sadness. It fills me with guilt. It's, I'm like, oh, if only I could have been able to be more, yeah, in the room, I suppose, at the time, instead of kind of battling through this really challenging relationship and battling through my own, yeah, my own emotional struggles. So yes, I think it's so destructive when it's like, oh well, I messed that up. I messed it up when he was, when I was carrying him, and then for the first year of his life.
And I'm someone who, I had my battles with kind of postpartum anxiety, and my goodness, if I if I absorbed every single parenting piece of material that said, well, because you had that, your child will feel this and this, I mean, that would just be horrendous. I think it's really important that actually we also tell people that attachment is a lifelong process, and it's a long dynamic. And you know what? If you had difficult times, that's okay. That's okay, because also you're encouraging your child to see that a relationship and a long-term attachment relationship does have some. There are going to be times where there's ups and there's downs and all sorts of different stuff. But I really wanted parents to feel that even if you haven't done everything by the book that science says that you should have done, that's okay. I remember reading this amazing study. I think Harvard did it actually. It was a longitudinal study, so a long time study of people who reflected positively on their childhoods. And it actually said that, do you know what? It had nothing to do with the amount of time the parents spent. It had nothing to do with the type of time. It had nothing to do with that, actually. The one thing that was across, and I'll find the study for you guys and I'll see if I can link it. The one thing that was across the kind of respondents who said there was a positive experience, which I thought was amazing, was a parent who seemed, they had clear memories of times when the parent was really happy to be in their presence. And I thought that was so wonderful because it was giving experiences of, you know what, if you were a working mum, if you were a mum who was, I don't know, you had to travel, you had different stuff going on. As you say, you went through a separation. It's not about that. It's about when there were memories when, and it wasn't even about you took them on an expensive day out. It was about them remembering your face, being happy to see them. And how wonderful is that? I just thought, God, I wish people heard this stuff more often.
Yeah, this is all very, very reassuring, I have to say. I really like your, I really love that that it is the realistic kind of messy version. And that makes so much sense because when I look back at my own childhood, obviously the thing that makes my heart feel full is those moments with my parents when there was, when it was a feeling of love and feeling warmth and all of that. It wasn't, you know, yeah, it wasn't the quantity of time or the toy that I was begging for or whatever. It wasn't any of that stuff. And then one thing I wanted to ask you is, and as parents and maybe us single parents, even more so, are, always questioning, are we getting it right? And, trying to be mindful of how are our kids really doing. And so are there any signs or things that represent issues or trauma that we should keep an eye out for?
Sure. I mean, I think it depends on the age of the child initially. So we will see more kind of physical displays in younger children because obviously for two reasons. They may not be fully verbal. They also may not or likely will not have a good kind of emotional articulacy. So in young children, we're looking at signs of things. And again, this is really important. I apologise that I'm going to keep going, but with a caveat. But it is important that things are nuanced, right? So it's important that if you're seeing changes in behaviour, so maybe, I don't know, changes in sleep patterns, changes in toileting patterns, changes in eating patterns. And the key word here is changes. So things that have all of a sudden an onset, that might be a concern. Sudden aggression, that might be a concern. The thing with aggression and emotions, in particularly, let's say under fives, they're going through all these wonderful developmental leaps, and that can be overwhelming anyway. So that can create some of that anyway. But it's just worth having it in the back of your mind if it's got a sudden onset and it appears to also occur only in certain circumstances. It's just worth having a think about that. With school-age children, again, if something has a sudden onset, if they're kind of refusing to go to school, is one I'd always want to look at, because I'd want to think about why that is. Is it to do with the classroom? Is it to do with the other children in school? Is it to do with the teaching style? We'd always want to have a look at something where they're refusing to attend a certain situation. Sudden onset of nightmares or sudden onset of anxieties, it'd be worth having a look at that. With teenagers, it's obviously they usually have better emotional articulacy. So if they're talking about having anxiety or depression, of course, that's worth having a look at and thinking about and what that might be connected to. In the first instance, ask open-ended questions. So you could say, "Oh, I've noticed," and see what they say. If they're telling you that they have anxiety or depression, of course, by all means, consult a professional and see what they think. But I think the key things that we're looking for here are noticeable changes in behaviour that weren't there beforehand. That can be for other reasons. That can be for, developmental reasons. But it's worth just asking some open-ended questions of, "Oh, I've noticed you're not playing with so and so much anymore," or, "Oh, I've noticed you don't seem to want to go to school," whatever that is. Just kind of asking non-judgmental questions and seeing where it kind of goes, really.
Yeah, that the changes thing, even as I look back through my own journey as a parent, that's been when some real telltale kind of signs have popped in for certain key things. Yeah. And finally, because this is, there's, yes, so much that's come out of this conversation, and I can't wait to get my hands on your book. It sounds like it is an absolute essential reading for it really does, and very reassuring, as I said as well. I was going to ask, how can we as parents make sure that we are looking after ourselves, and kind of, I suppose, what can we do, what can we model, what kind of self-care can we bring into the equation to make sure that we are able to be the best parents we can be?
Definitely. So I think in the first instance, one of the things that's really important when we're trying to hold our child's emotions is, are we in a good emotional regulated state in the first place? Because sometimes, and as any parent of a teen will tell you, that can be an intense, exchange, right? They can come with a lot of emotions, and you've got to kind of really sit and notice what your triggers are, how you're feeling, you want to react right now. So doing that early work on what your experience of being parented was is a good one. But I think this is really difficult to do, but it is important to remember, is getting perspective, thinking about, did my child feel loved today? Were they safe today? Then you know what, even if nobody did any homework, mealtime was a nightmare, there was too much screen time even because the day just got away from you, you did a good job today. And I think it's really reminding ourselves that not every day is going to be a day that we, want to make an Instagram reel about. That's fine. And on that point, I would say, as much as possible, monitor your social media consumption, because it has been shown to have kind of negative impacts on mental health, particularly in your view of parenting. There was a study, I think, I forget who did it now. It was a UK study, but there was, because there was a social media increase over the pandemic, there was a study of UK parents who said that that social media increase of looking at images of perfect parenting, the Priory in the UK did it, and they called it the sharenting study. So people who shared their, kind of idealized views of parenting on social media, and it increased anxiety and feelings of kind of low mood in other people. So I think just really be mindful of the images that you're absorbing, but more than anything, have that kind of perspective check in. Were my children safe today? Were they loved? And you know what? You did a good job. You did a good job. it's not everything is going to be, not every day is going to go the way you wanted it, but it's hard, and particularly as a single parent, it's hard because you don't have the other partner to bounce those things off. You don't have the other person going, do you know what? Do you want to take 10 minutes? I've got this. Go and have 20 minutes. You don't have that person. So it's doubly hard because it's just you. It's just you. So it's even more important to gain that perspective with yourself.
Yeah, well, I am going to adopt that mantra of did my child feel loved today, and were they safe? Because I am a big believer in choosing your battles. And, if it means ordering in a pizza for dinner so that I can just, sit and be with him and, have a chat and enjoy each other's company instead of frantically pottering around, making dinner and trying to get everything done perfectly and have the perfect tidy house and all of that. So yeah, I'm a big believer in, taking the shortcuts where we need to.
Absolutely. And equally, with people who've got children with homework age, of course, we'd all like our kids to sit and do the reading every night and and the word tins and the things and the things and the things. But particularly when you're a single parent, that doesn't always get done. And that's just how that is. And obviously we can all aim for that to get done and the child to do what they need to do. But some days that stuff gets away from you. The house is untidy. No one's school uniform's been ironed. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. This morning I sent my son in his school gym clothes because his uniform, which he was supposed to be wearing, I couldn't actually, I think it was at his dad's. So another single parent another single parent issue with the uniform thing. But you know what? I was just like, you know what? That's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I'll explain to the school and just to alleviate this pressure and shame, the parenting shame that we put ourselves under. And as you say, with looking at social media and seeing other people who are, baking healthy snacks the night before to put in the lunchbox, yeah.
And actually that shame, when we tap into that shame, that makes us resent our role as a parent. Sometimes it makes us resent our life as a parent, and that's far more damaging than wearing the gym kit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because do you know what? He went in clothes. They weren't what was prescribed for that day, but that's fine. That just wasn't, you didn't need the logistic workaround of having to go to your ex-partners and find it. I mean, nobody needs that. So I think particularly when you're a single parent.
Well, Dr. Alison, I really, really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. It has been...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I feel more reassured about my own parenting kind of style and decisions, and really interested to get my hands on the book and delve a bit deeper into some of the things we've discussed. And so where can people find you? Where can people work with you? And can you remind us about what your book is called and when it's out?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Dr Alison McClymont Insta. You can find me there. I work at the Soak Clinic in London, and I also do online work. But my book, How to Help Your Child with Anything, is coming out with Orion Publishing on August the 29th. So I can send you all the links and all the fabulous stuff for those things. Perfect. On there. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Alison. And I know that all of our listeners will feel more informed and more equipped from listening to this conversation. So thanks on behalf of the Frolo community as well. I'm excited to read your book.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frolo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frolo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frolo.com or follow us on Instagram at FroloApp. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.